Their outlook is Harry has decided to relinquish his royal duties. He's decided to go over to the States. He can then decide to have his own private security. And this is a huge error, I believe, on part of any duty of care.
Now I think I understand why he's so adamant about having this police protection, because it's, apples and oranges. You can't really compare the two, because he really needs it. And, he said when he came back in July that his security was compromised. Could the royal family, could they step in and say, can they trump that and say, we want to give him police protection? Can they do that or not?
I don't know the social political process here. The royal family can, of course, express a grave concern over his security, which could influence the outcome of decision-making process with the committee. There are palace officials involved in any decision-making process that they conduct, and no doubt it is influenced. But this influence, of course, I think there is, admittedly, there is an undercurrent of a political frustration with the situation, and the reaction seems to appear to be more of spite and rebuke than it is of actually focusing on threat. I mean, when we sit here and we're discussing possible worst case scenarios that could happen to Harry and Meghan, I dread to hear the outcome of a conversation that is to be had in who decided what. And of course, at the end of the day, these decisions, they're not taken lightly by the committee, and it's a collective decision. So not one person's head would be scrutinised in the decision-making process. The whole collective would be. But nonetheless, there will still be questions to be answered if something did occur.
Yeah.
And of course, there is an element of duty of care that I'm surprised hasn't actually been undertaken. It's been a complete wash of their hands. At the end of the day, their outlook is Harry has decided to relinquish his royal duties. He's decided to go over to the States. He can then decide to have his own private security. And this is a huge error, I believe, on part of any duty of care, on part of any focus on the threats and Harry's risks to those threats. The focus should have been a balanced approach in comparison to other senior members of the royal family, but also the fact that here we have in the UK, like there is in the US, a process and policy that is inbuilt to prime ministers and US presidents, whereby when they have actually undertaken that role in office, when they depart from that role, that function in office, they carry on continuing receiving that protection for the rest of their life. Now, when you have a prime minister in the UK who has just done that, he's now no longer a prime minister, and indeed no longer a minister at all. He or she will still receive that protection for the rest of life. Yeah. And the argument is that when it comes down to cost and the argument of Harry, well, he can pay for himself and so on. I mean, this is almost a ridiculous situation because prime ministers receive that protection at the expense of the UK taxpayer, even though they're no longer serving the Crown. So how can you then argument the fact that Harry is no longer providing a service to the UK population and the UK taxpayer not fulfilling that funding?
Yeah,
it's a difficult situation, but I would have preferred to have seen Police Protection Command here in the UK overseeing the private sector provision in the US, with the private sector having an increase of that function in the US. But when Harry comes over to the UK, because of the locally assessed risks, the police protection should increase and take over. You cannot have a UK private sector provision, given the fact that no firearms are permitted also. You cannot have that private sector provision for someone of such high social standing. Is rolling the dice, and I fear any outcome.
Right. No, you're so right. And it does sound a little bit like this is a bit out of spite and a bit to kind of stick it to them a little bit. And, now you can understand why Harry may have wanted to leave and, kind of, and it's not like he's asking for this for full time. He's asking for this for, a long weekend or when he wants to come in, for the Jubilee or for Prince Philip's upcoming memorial. So, I mean, do you think that he should not bring his entire family, I would guess, and maybe he'll still come on his own? But even he said that was a big risk for him too.
It is. Where, of course, if you were to provide protection to the couple coming into the UK, the consideration isn't just protection to the couple when they are co-located, but you also have to cater for those times when they are actually split, whether that's temporary throughout the day or whether they are actually attending different functions at the time. You need to cater for that security. So it could double or even triple the overall security cost for them. Yes, it would be difficult, but the thing is here is the fact that if police protection was provided, then they would of course cater for those eventualities a lot more effective than the private sector.
Yeah. Well, so interesting. Do they feel like, do you think in some way that they feel like if they make an exception for him, they'll have to make an exception for others, or do they make an exception for others depending on the situation?
This has been raised. Basically, they're saying, look, Harry is stated that he will pay for police protection, but the police cannot be bought.
Right.
And I agree, the police should not be bought. But they're stating that it would set some form of precedent in terms of if we allow this, then we're going to have to allow someone else and so on. I don't agree with that perspective whatsoever. The provision of security to Harry is not just solely on cost or the fact that the police are providing, making an exception to the provision for him and them. So there are other aspects in play here, not least the fact that he is a senior member of the UK royal family. So that alone, in my eyes, should dictate that provision, that onward provision, but scalable. It should be provided on a cascading level, depending on where he is in the world and the activity he's undertaking. Yeah. But overall, if he was to come to the UK, then that police protection should be provided, of course.
Right. I know this is probably just speculation, but how much would this cost for Harry to pay for this on his own?
It's very difficult to put a figure exactly on it. The cost for a personal protection officer from the Met Police has been estimated to be around £100,000 a year.